I'd like to call this October 27th, 2022 Board of Education regular meeting to order. Mr. Anagnastu, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
And Ms. Stochek?
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our district goals, we recite our district goals at the beginning of every meeting. They remain the same: academic achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. And I think this meeting, particularly, we will be working through all three of those goals during our SWOT analysis. Public comment, I do not have any public comment slips. Is anyone dying to make some public comment? Hearing none, I will share with the community. We have a new board docs software to help us with our meetings and our agendas and our minutes and a lot of other aids to help the board and the administration do a good job. But if today's meeting is a little clunky, we're telling you now why. With that said, next up is Treasurer's Report. Mr. Anagnastu.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. And just to add on to that, we're no longer printing the agendas like we used to. So to access the board meetings, you could access it through a smartphone or a laptop or any device connected to the internet. Go to our homepage, go to Board of Education Board Meetings. There's a link that takes you to Board Docs, and then you can click on the meeting and access the agenda from there and follow along. And we're also broadcasting the agenda on the screen as well. So to that, I have a few items for your consideration tonight. First of all, it's new funds for fiscal year 2023. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the following new funds be approved for fiscal year 23. Fund 6 for the PEBT administrative grant, fiscal year 23, which is a state grant. Fund 399.19 for OSHA tournaments. This is a reclass from the state auditor's office where these funds were accounted for in a Fund 22, that they are now to be accounted for in a Fund 300 student activities account, as in now the state is, instead of reimbursing us for expenses, they're providing the districts with stipends to cover the expenses. And lastly, Fund 599.9023 for miscellaneous federal grants for the fiscal year 23 school safety grant. And grant approvals, approving the be resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the following grant be approved for fiscal year 23. The school safety grant for $289,043.96. This is this from the governor's office. The state's using a portion of their ESSER funds, passing it along to schools for school safety, and it can be used for certain criteria. We were awarded, and it's by school. Mr. Breckner applied for additional cameras for Kinsner, Muraski, Soror, and Whitney for $50,000 each. The preschool for $47,084, and Chapman for $41,959. And lastly, approving the amended appropriation for the changes that were listed. So for the school safety grant, $289,000, the food service EBT grant for $3,135, and then the reclassification of the OSHA tournaments, reducing Fund 22 by $142,000 and increasing Fund 300 by $75,000. Since they're no longer reimbursing us for all of our expenses, it's just a stipend, I don't think the appropriation needed to be as high as it was. That's why it's not an even swap. And with that, that concludes my report.
Any questions for George? Thank you, George. Next is our superintendent's report. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. We just have a few human resource items for your consideration this month, so I'm going to turn over to Jenny for her report.
So, thank you, Dr. Ryba. So for your consideration this evening, I have the resignation of a non-certificated staff member. I have the retirement of a certificated staff member. I have the appointment for a certificated district substitute. And finally, appointments for non-certificated athletic supplemental contracts. And that concludes my report.
So unless there's questions for Jenny, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Hearing none. Next on our agenda. It's too far away.
Oh, sorry, report on Polaris.
Report on Polaris, Mrs. Bissell.
Thank you. Couple of things to report this evening. Most of us here had the chance to visit Polaris on October 11th for the Associate School Boards Dinner. So that was an opportunity for all school boards from all the districts that send students to Polaris to get together, to see Polaris, to experience what the culinary program there has to offer, as we enjoyed some delicious food and appetizers and dessert. And they also honored Southwest General Hospital as the first recipient of the Outstanding Partnership Award. So we did get to hear about how Southwest has really stepped up and provided opportunities for Polaris students to have on-the-job type training. So that was a great event, and we enjoyed it very much. So thank you to Polaris for hosting that. A couple of things to note for our current sophomore students. November 16th is Strongsville's opportunity for the sophomores to go to Polaris in the afternoon, and they kind of get the tour and information about the programs then. And then the following evening from 6 to 7:30 p.m. is high school registration night. So I know it's early in the year. We're maybe not thinking about next fall already, but if you're a sophomore, it's time to be thinking about next fall. So if you're interested in Polaris, make sure you're aware of those two dates. And then finally, Savor is the restaurant that Polaris runs to give students experience preparing and then serving food. They are doing their annual pie fundraiser. So if you go to Polaris's website, scroll down to the bottom, there's a link that says Savor there. Click on that, and there's an order form. I hear that people wait all year for this opportunity to order these pies, and it does raise funds for the organization. So if you're interested, you can click on that link or find one of our students who is a Polaris student, and you can order through them as well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is report on legislation. Did you have anything? November 8th is Election Day, and so our report on legislation is there's not been a whole lot going on in Columbus because I think everybody's worried about Election Day and campaigning and working on Election Day. And I remind the public that many of our schools are used for Election Day, and I'm sure Dr. Ryba will update us on our, it's not called at-home school, asynchronous learning opportunities for Tuesday, November 8th. But I know I recommend everyone get out and vote. And that is our legislative update. City Council. City Council did meet last Monday, and I do want to announce for City Council, I think the good news, not just the big news, but the good news is that the Strongsville Rec Aquatic Center reopening is Monday, October 31st at 6 a.m. And as many of you know, they're expanding hours, and in addition to Sunday hours, which we haven't had Sunday hours at the rec center since pre-pandemic, Sunday hours are coming back, and along with that, throughout the week, they're staying open later. So Monday through Friday is 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday is 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Sunday is 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and all in all, that's a good thing. And I do know the economic department brought in another new company, Schaefer Distributing, Schaefer something.
Scheffler.
That, what Mr. Clark just said, Scheffler Automotive Distributing. And so we're excited to have them as part of our business park, and the increase in income tax from them is why we're able to expand our hours at the rec center. and without increasing income taxes. So that's a good thing also. Strongsville Education Foundation, do we have an update?
Yes, the foundation met last week. They reviewed their leadership retreat that their executive board had prior to the meeting. And they also went over a few grant requests that I'm sure that we will hear more about in the upcoming month or two. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Hausum. Mrs. Cobain, do you have a PTA council update?
Yes, the PTA has upped their grant from 6,000 to 10,000. Again, I always say these volunteers do a fantastic job. They had a dance at the middle school, all went well, which is good, and they raised $6,000, which was really amazing. And on top of that, there is, look for the Jingle Jam Dance, which is the next one on the schedule. They said that there'll be more information for that coming up. And also, they did a lot of these fun runs at all the schools, and it was amazing how, I can't believe how much money they raise on this. Well, yeah, I'm a grandmother, so I was like doing that, and I didn't realize how many laps they'd go. So you could make a lot of money that way. But I know Chapman, for one, exceeded their goal. They made, it was Sarar, exceeded their goal of 30,000. So they do amazing work. I say that every time. These people, like, donate a lot of their time for no money, but a lot of pleasure to see the kids. So, and then just look for updates on all the other things they're doing coming up. They always keep you pretty posted. That concludes my update.
Thank you, Sharon, and it makes me happy to know that there are grandchildren out there that are more energetic than their grandparents estimated ahead of time. I think that's the nicest way I can say that it makes me happy that they took advantage of you.
Yes.
Next on our report is Finance Committee. Do we have an update from Finance Committee?
Yes, our next meeting is next Tuesday, November 1st at 7 p.m. here at the Administration Building.
Policy Committee?
Our next meeting is here on Thursday, November 17th at 9:30 a.m.
Excellent. Facilities Committee?
Sure, I can do it. We had our most recent Facilities Committee meeting this past Thursday, where we met at Chapman Elementary to tour basically what's going on there in terms of facilities. So we saw all kinds of things that I didn't know existed in the building. We saw the little attic storage room. We got to walk on the roof. We saw a lot of walls that our maintenance and facilities employees were able to construct in order to divide classrooms. So we're seeing the ways that we're getting creative in spaces that we've outgrown in many ways. So this was the first of the 5 elementary school tours. And the next one is coming up on November 17th at 6:30 p.m. at Kinsner. So if you're interested to see Kinsner, I really recommend the public come. There's a lot to be gained from getting behind the scenes of what's going on in our school buildings. So please consider coming out to that and learning about our school buildings. Richard, do you have anything to add?
I can echo that I think it's worthwhile to actually go to the elementary schools and see them, and you know, what we're planning and what we eventually will come to the community for their support on. We'll be able to say we delved into the details with our own eyes. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Martin Brickner, who is the head custodian at Chapman. It is obvious how much pride he takes in the building. The building is clean, the building is open, the building is lit up, and you can see, you know, it's not just a job to him, it's an avocation, and it's nice to see that, and, you know, that kind of story happens throughout the district, but it's always fun to actually see that in action, and so we thank him for his hospitality and giving us a tour of all of the unseen things at Chapman. Business Advisory Council, do we have an update?
We had a meeting on on October 7th, and we had talked about starting the interview process earlier in the year to get students. Last year, there were 11 juniors in the program. This year, there are 18. Some of the companies that they're working with are Great Lakes Construction, Judge Downtown, Elementary School, and Southwest General. They're looking to expand business partners and also have virtual business partners. We broke into groups and did SWOT analysis, and I was really excited because I had never heard of a SWOT analysis before I was on the school board, and I've heard it more in the last 10 months than I have in my entire life. And I was able to know that it was strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and what to do with that. So thank you very much, everybody. We talked about getting more business partners, virtual connections, whether that be even doing a career fair of sorts at the rec center or at one of the schools to bring people in, cohort field trip opportunities, placement and shadowing opportunities for seniors, and business partner marketing and recognition. Right now, everything is really word of mouth, but we need to expand that and figure out how we can get into more businesses and tell people what we're doing without necessarily just sending something without a face behind it, a flyer to try to get people to read it. People are busy. They might see an email from somebody they don't know, they might delete it. So we are working on figuring out a way to get more business partners, because I feel that once people actually see what this is doing, what this whole organization is doing, they'd be really about joining it and helping with it. So our next meeting is Friday, December 2nd, right here, 7:30 a.m., and hope to see everyone there.
Thank you, Haley. Next is adoption of consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent calendar at this point means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type action consent, asterisks were easier, are adopted by one single motion unless a board member or superintendent requests otherwise. Do I have any otherwise? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Ms. Stavcek. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Ms. Stavcek,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko.
Yes, and the motion carries. Next is Board of Education Other. Here's the meat of our meeting to do the SWOT analysis. Cameron, you want to get us started?
Sure, so I'd like to ask Phil Herman to come up from the Impact Group. As we've talked about at various board meetings, we are embarking on the strategic planning process, and a part of this year with the Impact Group is actively engaging internal and external stakeholders in this work. So Phil is here to lead us. This is the first start of the process, so we're starting with the Board of Education. The board, you've all gotten your materials and been well prepped for this, and so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Phil, who's going to introduce and lead us through the process. So thanks for being here with us, Phil.
Thank you, Dr. Robert. Good evening. How are you?
Wonderful.
Great.
Nice to meet you.
My name is Phil Herman. I'm with the Impact Group. The Impact Group is a firm out of Hudson, Ohio. It's been in existence for 21 years. That does work around strategic planning, communications for school districts, strategic communications, crisis communications, and professional development. Mostly for school districts. About 70% of our work is school districts. We also work with boards of developmental disabilities as well as cities and villages too. I want to particularly thank you. Before I came to work at the Impact Group, I just have been at the Impact Group since last February. Before that time, I was an entire career in public education, 25 years plus in public education. I was a teacher, a principal, a coach, a director of human resources, an assistant superintendent, and then for 11 years, a superintendent, most recently at Hudson City Schools. And so when I was at Hudson City Schools, I was able to work with Dr. Riba as a colleague, serving on FACET committees with him. But I also came to know Strongsville multiple times. You helped us out when we came to tour your middle school as we were facility planning to build a new middle school, and then tour this building because we were looking for examples of school districts that repurposed elementaries in financial responsible ways as a central office, which is exactly what we ended up doing in Hudson, following in your footsteps. So I am grateful for that as well. As we dig in tonight, I have a really quick activity before we start thinking about the vision. Do you have a bucket list item, bucket list, something that you need to complete before you die? Think about that. Something you really want to do. Not necessarily that you need to complete, you really want to complete before you die. If you would, take a minute, think about that. Jot down one of them on that list. If you want to list 2 or 3, go ahead and do that too. But just, what's something you want to do before you die? It's your bucket list. Everyone got one? I will not force anyone to share, do not worry. Where's he going with this, right?
I don't know. We danced before.
That's true, that's true.
Okay, now it gets real. Put a date down next to it.
Oh, come on.
When do you
When we
to
want to die?
It's like a scary movie.
Good clarification, like, not the day you're gonna die. When are you gonna do that? When are you gonna do that bucket list item? It starts to feel a little more serious when you put a date next to it. What's one step that you could take, one action step that you could take in the next week to make that goal a reality, that bucket list item a reality? What's one step that you can do? If it's a trip, maybe it's just researching the cost of the trip. Maybe it's even, if it's some sort of activity, where do you go do that? If it's engaging with a family member, how are you going to reach out to them? What's one action step that you can take? Anyone want to share theirs? Yes.
I'll share. Might be shocking to some. I want to run the Marine Corps Marathon.
Nice. Nice. By when?
This is scary. I put October of 2025.
Nice. October of 2025, and what's the step you can take?
Go home and print a training plan.
I love it. I love it. Exactly. Anyone else? Thank you for sharing.
I'll do.
Yeah.
Have children.
Nice. What's your date?
I put 2025, but
25.
I'm willing to.
Is Mike what?
Dog children,
I was
whatever.
going to say, who's your date?
Well, the step is I need to learn to manage my time and prioritize things
Yes. Yes.
and not multitask
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
and say no.
Anyone else want to share?
Anything else?
Yes.
I would like to publish a book.
Love it. I went.
Well, I put age 55, so I gave myself some time.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. What's a step you can take?
I could write a poem.
Yeah. So it's going to be a book of poetry?
Well,
or
I
you
mean, I
just start
have
writing?
one, it just needs more.
Right.
So, yes.
Right. Great, thank you.
Mhm.
What you just did there, writing down what's important to you, something that's really important in your life, putting a date next to it, and identifying an action step, exponentially increases the chances of that occurs. You can see the connection to what we're talking about. That's exactly what strategic planning is. We're going to talk about what your most important priorities are. We're going to engage you this evening. We're going to engage the administrative team next week. We begin focus groups with students and staff members and community leaders. We conduct a community survey, and we surface out as much as we can in terms of what is important to this community, what are the most important priorities. We help draft goals and objectives based on that input, which we bring back to you for consideration. And eventually, it leads to an adoption of goals, objectives, and action steps, including dates and who is the primary person responsible for moving those objectives forward. That also exponentially increases the chances that those things, what are most important goals and priorities for this community, and for you as Board of Education members and for this administration, are implemented and instituted over the next 3 to 5 years. And so this is the very first step in that process, is working with you and the administrative team over tonight and next week to conduct a SWOT. And so the first step of that really is to get into the vision. And this isn't necessarily a vision statement like you might see in plans. This is really just where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now? where do you see the Strongsville City Schools in 3 to 5 years? What does that look like? What has happened 3 to 5 years from now that is cause for celebration? What occurred? Or what does the organization look like? You're going to rattle off some of these things. I'm going to capture as much of it on paper. The beautiful thing about this Board of Education being recorded is that if I miss anything, I can go back and watch the recording. So it's really helpful. What is your vision for Strongsville City Schools 3 to 5 years from now? What are some of those things? What does it look like?
Technologically advanced, most advanced technologically in the area.
Oh, this is loud. My handwriting, here's how you knew I was not an elementary teacher. It's because of my handwriting, but do not worry, I can read my handwriting. Technologically advanced.
Safe.
Safe. This cord is I'm gonna move over.
I'd like to see new elementary buildings.
What else?
A top place where people want to be employed.
Thank you for that.
My sunglasses.
Way to go.
Where people want to be employed. What else?
I want to see 5 stars in all of our report card categories.
We're still financially sound.
Still financially sound.
Growing.
Growing. What do you mean by that?
More students, more everything, more opportunity, just in general, yes. More people moving into the area, wanting to go to the schools, and need for even more buildings, because the school district as a whole is growing.
Enrollment, opportunities.
Interest in,
What's the last thing?
interest in, like, growing interest in the area.
Growing interest in the district.
More academic opportunities for our students.
Any particular area that you can think of?
I think across the board, from elementary all the way through high school.
I think 2 more extracurricular for the younger kids, which isn't really our fault because it kind of got sidetracked during COVID, but I do think that we need to encourage that.
More extracurriculars for younger students. What else?
More interest from all parents in the district, I guess. Whether it be at board meetings or it be in knowledge of what's going on in the district. There's more parent involvement in activities and things.
More parent involvement.
Which I know is easier said than done with working and families, but.
I'd like us to be in the top 50 of schools in Ohio.
thoughts about how that's measured on the state report card, or when you think about top 50?
The report card, they rank the school
Yeah, they rank the
districts.
school
and
districts, right.
I'd like to be in the top 25, but
Yeah, yeah.
you said 3 to 5 years. So
3 to 5 years. On the path towards top 25, and
Sure.
in the top 50. Great. Thank you. What else? Thinking about those questions. Where you want the organization to be in 3 to 5 years, what's happened during that time that's cause for celebration? What does the organization look like? That's a good list.
Strong leaders and administrators. Cohesiveness among.
Good. Can you think of anything else there that you want to list? We're going to move these vision over here, and if there's something else that comes up and you say, oh gosh, I want to add that to our vision, we can do that. Anything else you want to add now? So the SWOT analysis, what we begin to look at is in order to achieve this vision, we have to think, how are we going to get there? And what are the potential barriers? And that's where we get into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So I have some guiding questions around those pieces, but that's where we'll move next. What are those strengths within our school district? Really, what do we do well? What's the cause for celebration right now? What do you brag about when you think of Strongsville City Schools? Strengths. What do you think?
I think their special ed is amazing.
What else?
Athletic opportunities.
Athletic opportunities. Keep them coming.
We have a comprehensive education. So for example, at the high school, we have everything from AP classes to, like Sharon mentioned, special ed, but we also have shop, we still have wood, science, all of it.
And to go with that, the variety of classes we offer in that of, English classes or certain kind of literature or folklore, this and that, so the course offerings, yeah.
Our music program and drama.
What are your strengths?
I think we have excellent financial leadership and management.
I like the head nod, George.
I think we have strong leadership as a whole, administrators. Strong and confident leadership.
What else?
We have good parents, and good students.
It's huge.
We have a lot of really good teachers too. They go above and beyond to do extra things they don't need to make the students feel important, to teach them, to make a very worthwhile school experience.
You can expand on that with our staff as well.
Yeah. I think we're really detail oriented as a district in terms of even, looking at the menus of what the cafeteria is gonna offer and things like that.
Detail oriented.
I know leave no territory unlooked or unacknowledged. I think all of our different areas work together, I can't even imagine how the transportation stuff works with busing when people call off and having to get subs, and I just think everybody works really well together to make it happen.
In the areas of operations, like the
That
kitchen,
should
the
be on the
day-to-day.
vision, get more bus drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to add that one on?
That would be great. That would solve a lot of problems.
But like all the pieces you don't really take into consideration, the, business services and the transportation that make everybody get here. They get the air conditioner unit put in when it doesn't work.
Other strengths.
We have a beautiful new middle school and a high school that got the updates that it needed.
Sure do.
A lot of happy people, a lot of people that
Yeah.
want to be a part of the district, that want their kids to be part of this district, that strive to move into the district so their children can go to this district. Or people like me that never left this district because they like this district so much, and now I'm here.
Having people want to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What else?
We collaborate well with the community. We have a lot of good working relationships with businesses and the city.
I'm so afraid I'm going to write on that whiteboard. I've heard that if you write with a permanent marker on whiteboard and you write over it with a dry erase marker, it will come off. But we're not going to test that here. I will do my best to
Well,
stay on
Phil,
paper.
there's the guy back there that just put the board in, so he's watching you closely.
Like this. Yeah, yeah. Other strengths.
Our kids really excel. Sitting there at graduation and sitting at the meeting when we talked about kids that were achieving things within the nation, like number or whatever in the nation, our students are really excelling, not only at a community level, but nationally and statewide. Even with like DECA program, the opportunities that we provide with that, and how many students we had that qualified for the, I don't know if it's called nationals for DECA, but
Yeah. Good. Other strengths.
I think we work well together as a team.
That's a
We
huge
can
strength.
communicate with each other, we don't, it's not like one person's way or everything else, or tantrums, we all kind of really communicate well, and I think it trickles down from there as well when we're dealing with, I don't say dealing with, but talking with other, what was that, is that about me?
I said it was my way.
I thought you were like.
It just ended. I was there at the moment where the collaboration stopped.
Wait a minute.
We should have the superintendent and assistant superintendent, and say kind of like, is that under leadership?
It is, but we can call them out.
I don't want to leave them.
I do think that's important to mention though, because not every school district has the kind of partnership that we have with the superintendent in particular.
Right.
I think it makes us unique.
Yeah.
We agree to disagree a lot of times, but that's okay.
It's a strength.
It is a
We
strength.
work well together.
And we're also different too. I think the fact that we can like laugh together a lot, like genuinely, like even in a meeting kind of things, we can come up with stuff and like talk about things that,
You have to worry about our, Yeah, pretty well.
Is that fair to say from what I heard, work well together, can function through disagreements?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Because that's a huge strength in an organization, the ability to do that. The Board of Education, you shouldn't all agree. It's not healthy for the organization if you all agree on all things all the time. It's much healthier when you do disagree, as long as you can function through disagreements.
I see other
Right.
things with how boards work, and I'm like, that's what it's like there, oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fantastic list. When you look down this list, these are the components that will enable you to reach this vision. You will need to rely heavily on those strengths in the coming months and the coming years. The next thing that we move on to is weaknesses. Thinking about, we need to become aware of our weaknesses so that we can mitigate them throughout this process. It's important for us to identify them and to surface our weaknesses. So, what are those areas where you wish to improve? What are those areas where you wish to improve? Here and ask Dr. Ryba, any help? Keep me supplied with fresh paper.
I would help do that. I don't think I could have reached it.
At the same time, weaknesses, what are the areas where we wish to improve? What are the areas that might require additional resource allocation to address them? What are our weaknesses?
Well, we weren't perfect on our state report card.
One of the areas we were not, where we need to be is gifted education. And I know have taken steps in the past handful of years to improve that, but we do still have some major work to do in terms of meeting what the standard is for gifted education.
I feel like time is one. I hear a lot about the professional development, and we're trying to put so much into the professional development days that we have to try to educate teachers or to do other things. So finding the time to make those things happen. Like we talked about letters training and when we do that kind of stuff.
Finding time for PD. Which, by the way, that's a really common challenge when we're facilitating these. That is a challenge. It's a real challenge, and it's a common one. Weaknesses.
I think we have some curricular weaknesses that we're starting to uncover more now that we have people in those roles. So for example, we have 5 elementary buildings and we're working to align them, but they aren't currently aligned.
What are weaknesses?
I think sometimes as an organization, we don't have good tools to determine where our focus should be. And so everything's a problem and everything needs to be fixed and everything needs to be fixed yesterday. And sometimes I think we need to develop better tools to say this is what we're working on and this is where our energy is, and not that this other problem isn't worthwhile or have merit, but you can only do so much in a day. Maybe just a different way of saying we don't have enough time.
Is that fair to say don't have good tools to determine where we need to focus?
I think communications, in terms of closing feedback loops, and also, as Haley mentioned before, we have a lot of departments doing a lot of things, and sometimes things get missed or dropped, or, so we've been, again, doing a lot of work of that. I'm thinking of your drawing, Cameron. So we're working on it, and I think we're moving in the right direction, but we still have more loopholes to fill.
Yeah.
I think the elephant in the room is our elementary buildings. They're a major weakness right now. Facility-wise, yeah, facility-wise, like. No, like when you go to Chapman and you see how
That's an
many
important clarification.
classrooms we've divided into sub-classrooms,
Yeah. Offices.
it's kind of
turned into
hard to
classrooms,
see, yeah,
Yeah. Principals' offices turned into
in
classrooms.
classrooms, right.
Yeah.
Look at your vision. Many times, some of the components of the vision are stated in the vision where we want to be in 3 to 5 years because of weaknesses that are in people's minds now. Do you have bus driver shortages? Do you have other staffing shortages?
Mm-hmm.
Subs. We need subs, or we use them on subs. so.
Is that a present weakness? I do not want to put things, I'm asking the questions, you tell me whether or not you think that's a present weakness.
Jenny would know that.
Is it
I
improving
think
though?
it's-
But,
Is it improving from where it was though?
yeah, I mean, we're getting new subs every day, but we still have vacancies every single day due to illness, you name it, but yeah,
How do you define the difference between weaknesses and challenges?
yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about threats shortly, and we would say they are very closely related. Generally, threats, we would say things that could surprise you or that come out, that potentially could come out suddenly or that you don't necessarily know the outcome of yet. Weaknesses are more present conditions. Yeah.
I mean, I look at the bus driver thing. The bus driver shortage is a challenge. It's not that, I don't
Oh,
look
I
at
see
it
what
as a
you're saying.
weakness, I look at it as a challenge, et cetera. On the other hand, if we don't have a system to effectively hire bus drivers above and beyond the current hiring environment, that could be a weakness.
I agree with you, and there are certainly challenges, and in that case, potential staffing shortages would be more one of the threats that we're talking about.
And so a weakness could be, we need to improve our ability to attract the best candidates. We have times where we hang the shingle out and we don't get a good response. That to me is something that's a weakness versus not necessarily just a challenge of what we're doing day to day.
Well, I think we did raise money for the subs, which I think has helped.
Yeah, one of the challenges there is that you're in the same boat of school districts all around us, right? Everyone is struggling with bus driver staffing shortages, and potentially in the coming years, teacher shortages. And so that's very similar. So you're right, the process to attract candidates. Other weaknesses that you can think of?
I think sometimes we don't address problems honestly. And so that, there's times where I think we have this is Strongsville, we're a wealthy, blessed community, et cetera, but we do have real problems, whether it's drugs, whether it's poverty, whether it's what have you. And sometimes I think for a number of reasons, we don't address it well. Don't address difficult subjects.
That's a good way to say it. sometimes in there, as you said at the beginning, because I'm sure that there are some difficult subjects that you are working with and wrestling with, but there are others that might be more difficult to put out there on the table and work through. And that's a fantastic one to be thinking about, because that really is something that will hold an organization back. Like working through difficult subjects can be a real challenge. It's why organizations don't always work through them, right? It can feel like a great threat. People get riled up when we talk about difficult subjects. And so, but if you really want to thrive, you really want this to occur, it's going to be essential that you have good processes in place that enable you to deal with difficult subjects, work through difficult subjects, and again, you rely on your strengths, that you work well together and you can function through disagreements, right? You see how some of those pieces come together. It's not fun to end on threats, so we're going to jump to threats and then come back to opportunities, because opportunities are so much more optimistic. So, let's think about it. What are those external fears that could strike any time? And what are those items for which you need to prepare?
Social media and technology.
Can you elaborate on that?
I was looking specifically at the one we just talked about,
Yeah.
difficult conversations or things happening, drugs, things within that are Snapchats, things like that.
Yeah.
Along with this, one of the things I put down is misinformation. I think in an age of social media, and Strongsville moms discuss it, and all of these different ways that we're getting our information, it has happened on more than one occasion where the wrong information is communicated, and it really can impact the way we're able to do our day-to-day work here in the school district.
The confusion.
Yeah, and there's, again, a lot of school districts wrestling with that, and where do we have communication up there as an that can work its way into opportunities, but communication, close the feedback loop, just communications in general is something that school districts are wrestling with. There's so much information that spreads so fast, there's so many platforms. Is it even possible for school districts to keep up, and how do you combat the misinformation that's out there?
Something unique to our community is the threat of the mall going under. It would make a significant financial impact on our district.
Other cities or communities becoming more desirable, and thus, whether it be educators or staff wanting to work there? Also, turnover rate of stuff, whether people are retiring or resigning or taking different jobs, having to reteach certain things, or, losing pieces of it right when you start getting the momentum with it, which is natural, but.
Other threats?
I think we've yet to see all the fallout from the pandemic, whether it's educationally for our students, for employment, and, you name it. There could be an unexpected consequence that we see down the road, 5 years, even 10. And not being able to predict that is certainly problematic.
you say employment is one of them?
Sure.
Yeah. Is mental health a piece of that?
Yes.
I think along with that too, I think it's often said by springtime that there's like that burnout. The students are ready for summer break, the teachers are ready for summer break. How do we keep the kids engaged into going into those summer months that, I mean, it's always been said ever since I was a kid. It's like, okay, we're in May right now. We're not gonna get accomplished what we want to because the kids are already checked out and ready for summer break. Like counting down the days to be done at that point.
There's a couple, it says on here, fears. I just think there are a couple of fears that generally permeate our community and then at large. One of them is if you say the word levy or bond issue, like heads fly off, right? Like there is a general fear of levies and raising money. And I think that impacts our ability to do our work, because I think we sometimes have to work to kind of put heads back on first before we can even start doing the work. And then the second one here specifically, I still think the fear of another strike looms in our community. And it impacts a lot of those other things up there, including levy and bond issues.
I think the threat, having to deal with the political environment nationally and even worldwide, I think that there's such a friction politically and polar opposites that creates a threat because people hear certain trigger words or certain things, and that's where some misinformation comes from, and it's like the external coming in and permeating in. So the political climate that's gotten pretty tense in the last couple of years.
Sure, I mean, that's one reason I came back to this working well together to function through disagreements. It is so important for you as an organization, and it is one of your best strengths if you can do that in a tough political climate where there's polarization, and you can continue as leaders to find ways to civilly disagree with one another and yet continue to move forward as an organization. It's really important for the functioning of an organization that's ultimately serving students. So again, I keep coming back to that as a strength, but please recognize that that is an important one for you.
I think safety is always a threat in this day and age. Just with how much violence takes place in the world.
The economy in general, recession, interest, however you want to say it.
Intern funding for things.
You know, all of our visions can be very negatively affected
Right.
if the economy goes south. And that could be, that, for me, the spheres I look at are Ohio, the country, and the world in general.
Yeah.
I think in part of the threat of the economy is the seesaw right now of what is going to happen. It's not even, it's like the fear of the unknown and the anticipatory stress of it, not even if it'll happen, but that affects your decision making for the future.
Is it fair to add inflation to that, or is that?
I said inflation, yeah. I mean, all of that,
Yeah.
however you want to phrase it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I look at our middle school, high school project, and the timing of that was so beneficial. We reaped so many rewards for a number of reasons, and we're not gonna be able to repeat it exactly the same way, but I think there are headwinds that really will work against us.
Yeah. Other threats, fears.
Just the, never mind. It goes on with inflation.
Not retaining our good employees, not retaining good leadership.
losing students to private schools.
Well, if they've ever changed the law, right? We don't have if the money ever follows the child, we don't do that in Ohio yet, right? No. If that would be a huge threat, if they decide that the money follows the child. I'm not saying it would be good or bad or whatever side, but that would be huge.
Yeah, so that's really the state funding structure, right? So what happens with the state funding structure, whether it be in relationship to students attending private or charter schools, or just the overall state funding structure in general, is a potential threat.
It does follow the students to community schools, and then there's also voucher opportunities for private schools that we lose funding to.
Oh, okay, I didn't know how extensive that was.
The threat of things getting, or the district getting so big or so complex that it's hard to oversee it all. It's hard to keep tabs on everything that's happening within the walls of the schools or being done. Kind of like losing touch of the every day-to-day, what's happening, because there's so much going on.
Now you see why we don't end with that, right? Right, because we want to shift our thinking to something a little more exciting right now. And so let's go on to opportunities. And so again, this is similar to strengths, but are there available resources that you don't currently leverage? Who's willing to help us? Where can we find community support? What are those opportunities? And this is something that should excite you a little bit.
Local businesses.
Yeah, I heard you talk about, I heard the report on business advisory come out from the council at the beginning, right?
Yes, must have been captivating. Alumni. Retired teachers as substitutes. Passing levies. I don't say I'll forget. Teachers and administrators who are hungry to grow and learn more and keep moving up within the district and staying within the district. Heads of curriculum that are excited to bring new things into the district, like whether it be the letters program or different curriculum that we have, excited to share it within the district and put in the work behind it to make it actually happen.
Has the curriculum excited to share and to implement?
Haley mentioned before, we have good parents, and you can always draw more, there's always more. You know, not every parent is involved, so there's always opportunities to get more parents or more grandparents or more, you know, siblings, et cetera, involved.
I also think we have a really good focus on mental health and guidance counselors and those opportunities can help us to get, special help for children that may need certain, extra things going on to help them be able to.
I'm going back over here to strengths. I don't think we listed that, right?
If we have that room in the high school where if the child just needs to hang out for a second and gain their composure or just chill out, they can go back to the classroom. So we have with those opportunities of understanding that more and being able to help those kids flourish in the classroom. Everyone. Because I think after the pandemic, everybody's a little different.
Yeah, I'll put it over here too.
Do you want, like, we have local businesses, do you want specifics or just generality?
So if you say something like local business partnerships, or if you're thinking of a particular business that is a major business that you're thinking, this is a real opportunity for us, we can list that. At the same time, there'll be opportunities as we get more specific going into objectives where we might say we want to build something in particular, and that's probably where we would get into that level of specificity.
Okay, I guess we could put we have a unique location. We're flanked by multiple universities. We've got one of the best library systems in the country here. We've got one of the best park systems in the country. We've got the airport, we've got a hospital. Look, we have all these major components that are all around us and accessible daily.
We are, due to the fact that we're financially sound, if we get into a situation where we need to do something, we have the money to do it, and it's not a matter of how are we gonna, in an emergency, come up with it in order to keep the school going.
We own some land.
Other opportunities.
We're able to identify visions and interested in bringing those visions to life, I guess. Rather than, if it's not broke, don't fix it, we actually want to add more stuff to something good. We've already made a good name for ourselves as a district, so it's kind of just moving on up the ladder instead of like digging yourself out of a hole. We have a good solid base to start from in moving forward.
Yeah, your reputation as a district is so strong. That goes on the strengths list too. Other opportunities.
We have interest from people who want to take on different supplemental stuff, like we do the job postings for coaches and whatnot, and there's people that actually reply to it and want to do it, and we're not struggling to find people to do it all the time. Which allows us to give opportunities to the kids if there are adults who want to lead the ship.
So my handwriting apparently deteriorates too. Even goes on. Other opportunities.
So is it through the lens of, is it just through the lens of positives, or is it just, these are things we could consider to look at in the next 3 to 5 years?
It can certainly, it's not necessarily through the lens of positive. I would say we use a word sometimes called problemunities. Every problem in it has built-in inherent an opportunity to address it and to get better.
So we have an opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years to look at what we do and find out where we're duplicating with other partners, and either highlight that partner and choose to stop doing it because we're duplicating resources, or vice versa.
Is that streamlining services?
That works.
Yeah.
You've done an incredible job of listing out those things that are important to you in terms of when you think about the school district in 3 to 5 years. The strengths list, weaknesses, potential threats, and a whole list of opportunities. It's really fun for us throughout this process then to, as we capture that information, and this being the first lens that we look through in terms of the strategic planning, and then you see so much of this reflected, typically coming back from staff, students, parents, community members, the administrative team, and also from their perspective, they tend to go a little deeper and a little more specific, which they should, right, from their individual perspectives. And so you will see many of the things that you listed, we see it over and over and over again, reinforced by your stakeholders throughout this process. There's one more section here, and we think about, it's important for us to capture in any strategic plan are your cultural aspirations. See, this doesn't happen in isolation. It happens within a context. Every school district has a culture. And the cultures are developed over long periods of time, but it's also important for us to be deliberate about the culture that we're trying to create in our school districts. And so we would say, what are your cultural aspirations? How do you want really people to act in your culture? Or what do you want your culture to be like? What are those words that you would use to describe your cultural aspirations? At Strongsville City Schools, we are what? What are those descriptive words that you would use? At Strongsville City Schools, we are
Open and welcoming.
I love it. Open and welcoming.
Inclusive?
Inclusive.
Constantly growing, changing, and improving.
Driven?
Good. Even that I might not be able to read.
Accomplished.
Leaders?
Hardworking?
fair and responsible. Respectful, responsible, oh, that's interesting.
What's that?
Respectful, responsible, and a positive role model. I have that wrong. No, that was not,
That's like one of our elementary.
that's our elementary motto.
Got it.
Good citizens.
Open to feedback? Prioritizing what's best for children above all else? Very safe in the grand scheme of things?
Keeping parents in the loop, being transparent.
Strongsville City Schools, we are anymore.
I have
Open and welcoming, inclusive, constantly growing, changing, improving, driven, accomplished. We are leaders. We are hardworking. We are innovative. We are fair and responsible. We are good citizens. We are open to feedback. We prioritize what is best for children. We are very safe. We keep parents in the loop. We are transparent.
I have a couple, but I don't know if they fit this way we've been going so far, but we'll try. I put developing critical thinkers, problem solvers, and creators.
Yeah. Catch.
We're just testing your writing skills.
I mean, it fits the sentence model, but it's not just an adjective.
No, it works.
And the other one,
Developing critical thinkers, what else?
problem solvers and creators.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, we teach within the world we live in. And what I mean by that is, we live in a world of technology, of easy access to materials, where, where kids have access to things at all ages, those kind of things, and I think that we have to teach in that world instead of denying that it's there.
That might overlap with where we're headed on this last sheet, which are the behavioral expectations. Because if this is our aspiration, how do we have to behave to make these things a reality? And that they'll start to merge in terms of some of those behaviors. I'm going to move cultural aspirations over. We can add to that if anyone has additional aspirations. And we're going to think about those behavioral expectations. If we want that to be a reality, if we want those aspirations to become a reality, how do we have to, what are our behavioral expectations?
I guess.
When you go to Chick-fil-A and you say, thank you, what do they say in response?
My pleasure.
It's my pleasure, right. Do you think that that just happens because they just hire tons of incredible teenagers that know to say it's my pleasure?
No.
Trained.
In Strongsville.
In Strongsville, that's exactly right. Everywhere else, they are very, very clear with their behavioral expectations with the individuals that they hire. This is really bothering me, by the way, behavioral expectations. If we want these cultural aspirations to become a reality, how do we have to behave? In Strongsville City Schools, we
Are expected to meet the state standards.
meet the state standards.
Be flexible.
Be respectful.
Be transparent.
Self-reflective.
Be held accountable. Troubleshoot.
Be available.
Open to new ideas.
Be well-rounded. Being able to do all of that as one person instead of one person do each individual thing.
Say that one again?
Rather than have like one person that's
We don't
respectful.
want just one person accountable, or one person transparent,
Oh, right.
one person flexible.
Right.
Yeah, it's like everyone holds the same behavioral,
Right, yeah, these are,
like,
must be behavioral expectations for everyone.
right.
Right. Right.
Lead from the top and set examples and role models. And I think with being available, being visible is important, whether it be at football games, whether it be at community events.
Be a good listener.
Be willing to go above and beyond. Or lack of better words, do things that are above your pay grade in terms of, do anything you can for your students, do anything you can for everybody. Not say, it's not my job to do that, or.
Behavioral expectations. We meet the state standards. We are flexible, we're respectful, we're transparent, we're self-reflective, we're held accountable, we troubleshoot, we're available, we're open to new ideas, we're well-rounded, we set example from the top, we are visible, we are good listeners, we're willing to go above and beyond. It's a pretty comprehensive list. Others?
Stay calm when things get stressful. Be accommodating to everyone's differences. accommodating and understanding. Work quickly and not procrastinate things. Or put them off.
If we find a solution to that one, particularly for middle school students,
They won't
you'll
be
have no
middle school
issue with
students.
people coming here.
Yeah, they would,
Right.
right.
Empathetic.
Enthusiastic.
Helpful and generous.
Well-spoken and that you but really know how to do something and show it, but if you're a teacher, you must be able to explain things so that anyone can understand it, whether they're visual or audible learners. Patient.
I'm looking at this whole list and thinking, this is a lot to accomplish, so I think we have to be willing to fail and learn from it.
And kind of go along with that, be realistic.
Integrity.
Not be impulsive. Well thought out.
I want my children to be all of those things. I'll settle for 2 out of 25.
If you're a parent, you know you've already failed, so it's okay.
I've heard Dr. Bill Daggett with the Center for Educational Leadership talk before, and about the importance of balancing those test score expectations with our behavioral expectations, and that in schools, he says, how many of you have children? And people raise their hand. He said, if you have a child, eventually at some point, they often show up at the door with a significant other, and they're spending a lot of time with that significant other, and you begin to realize that that significant other could become a part of your family at some point. And he said, in that moment, when you're beginning to realize that this significant other is going to be a part of your family, are you thinking about that person's integrity and their patience and their empathy and their ability to be respectful and flexible and transparent and the way they care for your child? Or are you wondering about their 8th grade test scores? And so that's not to say that those aren't really important components, because they are essential components of what we do, but we have to realize that in education. And when we think about behavioral expectations for an organization, how important that is to model all of these. And I love that you set the example from the top and be willing to fail and learn from it as we think about resilience being one of those pieces. It all has to work together in order for us to meet those state standards and to have that level of performance. Any other behavioral expectations? Take a sigh of relief, you have done it in terms of step one of the strategic planning process, the SWOT analysis. Look at all you have created in terms of the vision, identification of strengths, weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats, your cultural aspirations and behavioral expectations for a school district. It's essential that we start with the Board of Education, as you are the elected members in the community, to determine many of these things and ultimately to set that overarching direction. It's also important that we capture as much input as we possibly can, and that's exactly what happens over the month of November. As I said, we follow the same exercise with the administrative team, but then we go into student, staff, community member, community leader, parent focus groups over the course of the month of November, and send out the community survey, all of which will be compiled and will then be sharing the themes from those from that feedback with all of you. Thank you so much for your participation tonight. Dr. Rabbit, anything else you want me to cover?
No, I think you did a great job of summarizing where we're going next, and we've shared with our parents and our community and our staff, kind of saved the dates for what's happening in November, so they're aware and excited for those opportunities. But want to turn it back over to Mr. Micko and the board. Any other thoughts or questions or discussion you want to have on this topic tonight?
After the survey, will you show us how different our expectations and everything? I'm curious to know if, if we're looking at this and they're not looking at it the same way we are at all.
Sure. That's one of the responsibilities that we have is to make sure that you understand those themes that come back from that feedback. And so there may be some things that come up through that. Generally, with the Board of Education SWOT analysis, you've captured quite a bit, and you'll see some of that. Some of it will be represented more strongly than other parts, and so that's where you really get to see. I suspect that just about most of what we are going to hear is represented somewhere up there, but then we get to see the level of sort of strength in that.
Right.
I like the activity at the beginning and the point of when you put a date next to something, it kind of keeps you, no matter what that is, from procrastinating it and thinking like, okay, I'll do that based off something else. You're like, what are the goals to get to that right now? Like, I got to figure out the goals right now to make sure we are this, this, and this, instead of thinking the pieces will fall in place.
Right, and that's the advantage of a strategic plan, and it's the advantage of an organization being deliberate about what are our most important priorities, and then very specifically, we like to talk in really straight talk at the impact group and working with school districts, who's going to do what when. We want to get down to that level of specificity if we're going to move forward with achieving a strategic plan.
I think we've done all of that, but we've had conversations where we're like, well, if we don't discuss it at the next meeting, then it's going to be this time, and we want to get ahead of it before it becomes December and we can't do it. So we're conscious of that. Where you guys are.
So you'll share these with us so that we can review them and think about them deeper?
Yes, so
And if we want to change our
we'll take it
answers.
off. We'll take it off.
Or add something to it.
We'll move it from my chicken scratch on the typed up pages and say, did we accurately capture what we talked about that evening? Yeah.
Just speaking for myself, a lot of times I think about stuff and, oh, wait a minute, there's another threat that I didn't consider the first time around, or
Sure.
there's another opportunity. So I think it is worthwhile to just be able to, when the thoughts strike, to be able to add to those lists.
Of course, we'd be glad to hear that input and add it to the list. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time and the the bucket list. I still won't
Yeah,
tell you what
I
it
would
is.
encourage you to stick that on a mirror somewhere, or something where you
Yeah.
can see that every day on a dashboard, on a mirror, somewhere else, over here until you wrap up.
Thank you, Phil. We greatly appreciate this. It was wonderful tonight, so thanks for being here. And I'd also like to thank all of our community members and parents that are here. I would say this is the largest crowd we've had in a little bit, so just want to thank you for your interest and your participation here. That's meaningful. And again, you'll have an opportunity to have some direct feedback, whether it's focus groups or surveys. So I'd encourage you to participate in that so you can have your voices heard and be a part of the process as well. But thank you for being here.
Speaking again for myself, but I think for a lot of us, I'm really looking forward to seeing the same analysis from the different lenses, from the administration and the staff, the parents, the community members, and I'm really interested to see how the students approach this.
Yeah, just how different they see things.
I have a feeling the strength and the weaker opportunity in the lunchroom are all going to come together. So, thanks again, Phil. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'm supposed to say it's my pleasure.
That's right.
Next on our agenda is meeting notification. We have a regular Board of Education meeting work session Thursday, November 10th in the meeting room right here. And then we have a regular Board of Education meeting Tuesday, November 22nd, also in the admin building right here. We do have reason for executive session on the topics of
To consider the employment of a public employee and to prepare for negotiations with public employees concerning compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second. That was perfect timing.
Second.
Yeah, you know what, and then you'll know who it really is.
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes.
Ms. Stochek,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell.
We will enter into executive session at 8:15. We have no expectation of further business. Thank you again for your attention. Don't forget, Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Make sure to exercise your right to vote. Thanks very much and have a good evening.